Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Thanks for joining in to Financial Issues today. We are a ministry that helps to educate people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. We to defund darkness, adopting our biblically responsible investment strategy to help honor the Lord in the way that you invest, and encouraging you to fund the light, to be a joyful, generous, and obedient giver. So we're going to get caught up on some of your questions that you've been sending in on the show today. We're also going to be talking about the holiday shopping, Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday numbers and how they are looking and what that means for the economy for the holiday season. But let's get started with the stewardship verse of the day. From Psalm 37:39, but the salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their strength in time of trouble. What do you think, Seth?
It's a good verse, Shana. It really is. We can take great comfort knowing that in times of trouble, the Lord is our strength. And I would hope that when we read this verse, we realize that we can't lean on anything else but on the Lord in times of need. Of course, that is easier said than done, Shana, absolutely. But the Lord is indeed our strength and our hope when times are good and when times are bad. So I hope we would lean on Him.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know what's even harder sometimes for me to remember, though, is that the Lord is still my strength when I feel strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a mark of spiritual maturity is knowing that everything comes from the Lord. That's the, that's the foundational principle in stewardship. It's like you'll never get stewardship right if you don't really come to the understanding that God owns everything. So, our intellect, our strength to get things done, or our strength to endure hard things, our talents, our skills, our abilities to earn income, everything, not just money, not just the money in our bank accounts or the cars or houses or material things that the Lord gives us. Everything belongs to the Lord, and everything comes from the Lord, especially our salvation. So since nothing comes from ourselves, our right response when we truly get this is to honor, to worship, and to thank God for what we have. And a very practical way to honor God is how we handle the financial resources that we've been trusted to manage. And that's where we believe that we are really equipped to help you in doing that. So we hope that if you're not a partner, you'll consider becoming one. If you are a partner and have found a lot of value in it, we hope that you'll consider gifting a partnership to someone that you love this year. Well, let's take a look at those retail numbers from the biggest retail shopping days of the year. So how did it go? Remember, we've got inflation that's still persisting. We've got prices that are, somewhere in the official neighborhood of 20% higher than they were 4 years ago. I think that everyone would sort of agree that the official numbers are a bit skewed and that things are much more expensive than they were 4 years ago. So the preliminary data that has come in both for Black Friday and for Cyber Monday for 2024, I guess it really depended on what sources you looked at. We found a couple of different sources, and they all said something a little bit different. So I guess we won't have the official reads on those numbers until they've had a little bit more time to crunch the numbers. But Black Friday and Cyber Monday for 2024 experienced moderate to significant increases in consumer spending compared to last year, depending on, of course, which source that you looked at. For Black Friday, we're told that U.S. online sales reached approximately $10.8 billion, marking a 10.2% increase from 2024, according to one source. Another source said that online sales on Black Friday had increased 14.6%. But that's just part of the story. You know, those are pretty big increases, whether it's a 10% or a 14%. But you got to put the other pieces together. You know, traditionally, Black Friday, I don't know, when I never do Black Friday, but when I think of Black Friday, I think of all those visions that I've seen of, you know, people fighting over merchandise and punching each other out, and you know, all of that crazy stuff that is not very indicative of what Christians should, the spirit Christians should really be in the holiday season. But so you've got to combine that in-store traffic with the online traffic. In-store traffic, they say, declined by 0.8%. I believe that was, or is that 8% or 0.8%?
I believe it's 8% there, though it could be. Yeah, that's a pretty significant decline there for sure. Yeah,
so one source said it declined by 8%. Another source said that brick and mortar sales grew by 0.7%. So I don't know. I guess the truth lies somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then on Cyber Monday, I haven't seen any numbers out yet for Small Business Saturday, but I would imagine those numbers are a bit harder to gather. But for Cyber Monday, and I don't know about you, but I saw Black Friday was like a week-long event this year.
It was.
Or more. You know, I started seeing those Black Friday deals at least several days to a week before Black Friday actually happened, and I'm still seeing them. If I get into Amazon to order something, you know, I'm still seeing Black Friday deals. So I don't know what they're really going to count, if they're just going to limit it to those days or the whole, you know, advertising event. But for Cyber Monday, they say that online spending was projected to hit a record $13.2 billion. That would be a 6.1% rise over the previous year. So the one thing that I can really glean from this data, whether it's on the high end or the low end, is that more people are like me. They do their shopping online, or they're switching to do their shopping online. The thought of just going into a crowded mall just gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Brutal.
But overall, the combined sales for Black Friday and Cyber Monday were expected to surpass $75 billion with a B dollars, reflecting a 5% year-over-year increase, according to one estimate, or a 2.5% to 3.5% increase if you're looking at another source. So, you know, the biggest takeaway for me is that more people are shopping online than in the stores.
Absolutely. And that was kind of what I was going to ask you about this, Shana. What do we make of this, you know, kind of from a financial perspective?
Yeah, well, you know, we talked about in the last couple of days, the most recent number that we have for inflation, the PCE data, came out last week, and the official number for core inflation is 2.8%. So if it's, you know, if holiday shopping saw an increase of 2.5%, well, that means that we got less stuff than we did the year before, because inflation was 2.8%. If it was on the higher end at 5%, then I guess it means that the consumer is still fairly robust, or maybe just acting like the government and spending money that they don't have. I hope that's not the case for those of you listening and following along with us. But I can say this. It is amazing what has already changed since the red wave materialized for the 2024 election cycle. You know, I don't know about you, but the grass seems greener, the skies are bluer. I don't know if that's really true, but it just seems that way.
Feels like it, though.
It does. It also feels like people are, I mean, I guess unless you watch Lefties Losing It or some of those kinds of programs, but more of the people that I come into contact with are more hopeful, as, you know, we're hearing plans to cut government spending. Watching DOGE's has an X page now. I've mentioned that before, and I think you and Sam have been talking a whole lot about the things that are coming out there. But
delightfully fun.
Delightfully fun.
a little nerve-wracking when you see what our money's been spent on, but nonetheless.
Just disgusting.
Yeah.
It is really disgusting. But, you know, to see that our tax dollars have been spent on things like $28 million on licensing fees for a green camouflage pattern on Afghan National Army uniforms.
Wait, that's not American National Army uniforms?
No.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it makes you wonder where this money really is,
Good
right?
grief.
$2.5 million on a Super Bowl ad for the census. $1.7 for holograms of dead comedians. $500,000 to build an IHOP in Washington, D.C. $100 billion in estimated improper payments were made in Medicare and Medicaid programs in fiscal year 2020. $45 million for diversity and inclusion scholarship in Burma. $3 million for, quote, girl-centered climate action in Brazil. Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on. I would just encourage you to go to the DOGE page. All this while hardworking Americans struggle to put food on the table in spite of the 3 part-time jobs that replaced their 1 full-time job. All right, folks, we got to take a break. Probably a good thing at this point. But don't go anywhere. We're going to be back. We're going to get to some of the questions that you guys have been sending in because inquiring minds want to know about financial issues. I'm your host, Shana Burt. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
My name is Reagan Gardner, and I am in the 4th grade. Last year, I wanted to be like everybody else. I thought I had to act different, look different, and be different to be cool. When I joined Crossroads, I learned that God loves me just the way that I am.
Help reach more kids like Reagan with the hope of the gospel. To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachOurschools.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. On top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn.
Then they sat me down. If you were to die today, do you think you would go to heaven? And I was like, no. Keeping the child was my first stepping stone. And ever since then, God has cleaned me up from the inside out.
Help support women in need. Go to preborn.com/FISM.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Well, I thought I was finished, but I wasn't. Thought of more stuff. Like the $288,000 that was spent for diverse bird watcher groups. And what else did we talk about in the break there, Seth?
Yeah, we talked about there was like
steroids.
Yeah, Sam. There were a bunch of different animals and drugs involved together. Monkeys getting high or something. Is that right?
I don't know when this was done, but we did spend $2.3 million to inject beagle puppies with cocaine. So very exciting.
Where's PETA when you need him?
I know, right?
Yeah, seriously. Unbelievable. So it's, and Shanna, with the diverse bird watcher group, I'm wondering if the birds themselves are the diverse ones. Like if you just go to owls, are you not diverse, or do you have to look at all different? I don't know. Anyway.
Or I wonder if it's a DEI program.
Yeah, right.
Which, you know what? Animals know nothing about that because they just know that they were made by God and they just have instincts to do what they do, and they don't have anybody trying to convince them that God doesn't know best. And you know, if you were born an owl, you were really supposed to be a monkey.
Right.
And let's see how well that... I wonder if they've done a study on that.
Right. They probably have.
I don't want to know.
Using tax dollars to do that, yeah.
But, we were kind of talking about, the grass being greener, the skies being bluer. I'm really excited to see, all of the things that Trump is doing, the team that he is assembling. It's a really interesting game of 4D chess that we're watching play out right before our eyes.
Shana, what kind of grass do you have in December that it's green? That's incredible.
Oh, well, we don't have winters.
That's true.
We really do have green grass right now. Yeah. So, we are just thinking of some of the things that are happening right now. We're ecstatic to dare to believe that we, the people, will be allowed to make decisions about where our money is spent with these promised tax cuts that Trump has promised. No more do we have to find out that our money was spent getting dogs and monkeys high, or just the crazy things. Isn't there something about Russian cats on a treadmill, or
Russian
lizards, and
like sterilizing them, or then
because I know that's what I would choose to spend my money on, right?
Exactly. Yeah, because there's all these private businesses that are doing
that's
that
right.
Stuff, right.
Yeah, you've heard about all of those private companies that are doing really similar studies. No, you haven't, because they don't do it. They don't spend their money on frivolous things that just are a waste. But, even companies, even before, right ahead of the election this year, companies are starting to get serious about killing their destructive, productivity killing, divisive DEI programs. They're starting to come to their senses that, what, we don't have to do all this garbage. We can just do business and be successful at doing business. Companies are now starting to get really serious about reshoring. Potential homeowners are expecting mortgage rates to come down and more houses to be built as Trump squashes prohibitive government regulations. And, I've been doing some research and have been really refreshed to find out that Trump can actually do some of the things that he says he's going to do. There's roughly about, I think, 3 million federal employees that fall under the executive branch that Trump really would have the ability to deliver pink slips to. So this Department of Government Efficiency is not just doing research, they're doing research for a purpose and for a legitimate purpose. The fake news in the left-wing state-run media is starting to crumble as they come to terms with a new head of state. So the state-run media, they're figuring out is getting a new head. And we've got CNBC anchors visiting the Winter White House, Mar-a-Lago. You've got Sunny Houston. I don't know if you guys ever watched The View. I can't ever stomach a whole episode, but I see clips here and there, especially the ones that make it onto social media, where the lefty lunatic Sunny Houston is having to read multiple legal notes on the air because of something that she says. And it's really funny to watch Whoopi Goldberg call her out and say, "Sunny, you have a legal note to read." And then you just see her face turn so angry and say, well, because basically she's having to say something exactly the opposite of what she just said. Like, trying to smear people like Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth and George Santos. And she gets a legal note that she has to read about the reality of what she's trying to say. So you've got ABC trying to cover themselves. That's why they're making her read these notes and everything. So things are definitely changing, and Trump hasn't even taken the oath of office yet.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff for sure, Shana. I love it. Well, we do have a couple questions we can get to here, if you'd like, Shana. I know we wanted to get to Dennis's question yesterday, just didn't have time. But Dennis has a couple questions here, Shana. The first one, he says, I'm retiring from the military March of 2026. We're following the 45 to 55 asset allocation model, and we'll continue that model into retirement. I have about $560,000 in my TSP. I've got $111,000 in a Roth, $450,000 in a traditional. I have 11% in the G and F funds, 89% in the C and S funds. You've mentioned in the past that it might be best to roll everything over to the G and F funds. Would you still recommend this strategy? And Dennis is 56.
Okay, so Dennis is 56. He's retiring from the military. What I would want to know is, are you retiring to the point where you're going to start drawing income off of your investments, or are you going to, and by the way, Dennis, thank you for your service.
Yeah, amen.
Are you going to retire from the military and go into the private sector, or do something that's going to produce income there? So one thing that I would say is, if you are going to need to start drawing money off, is that you may want to consider keeping a portion or all of the money in the TSP plan, because I believe it is the case, and you'll want to double check me on this, but I believe it's the case in the TSP plan that you can take distributions penalty free from your TSP plan at age 55. So if you're 56, you've still got, another 3.5 years before you can take money penalty free out of your traditional IRA account. So, you may want to consider leaving some money, if you're going to be dependent on the income, leaving some money there for you to be able to draw off of. I'm going to suspect that unless you have assets in other places, or you have a very, very small cost of living that you need to keep up with, that you're probably going to be doing something else. So if that's the case, if you're going to be truly retiring or starting to draw off your money after your age 59 and a half, then I probably would just consider moving, just rolling the money into individual accounts where you can manage biblically responsibly. So the TSP plans, we have had some asset allocation models up there on the partner side of the website, just because we have a lot of people who use those plans, follow us, but they are not biblically responsible. So if you're wanting to take that chance to become biblically responsible, then that would be a good time to consider rolling it over. Just remember, that there's that benefit of staying in it if you're needing or wanting to take money penalty free versus the IRA. So if you're going to continue working, then no, I probably wouldn't go just to the more conservative funds. I would stay invested for growth, because, with inflation, how it's been over the last several years, plus, the inflation rate where we still are seeing inflation sort of reignited, and the spending not under control. Lots of talk about it coming under control, but, the Biden administration, I believe, has really ramped up its spending here in the final months, trying to, and even being proud of it and talking about how they're trying to push out as much money as they can to Ukraine and different things that they know that the Trump administration is not going to continue. So you got to keep up with inflation. So I would stay in some growth things, but if you have the opportunity, you may have the opportunity now to do what's called an in-service withdrawal, where you can go ahead and roll those things over, still continue to contribute to the plan and get your match, but have the money in those self-directed accounts so that you can be biblically responsible.
Awesome, Shana. Thank you for that. Dennis's second question is, you talked about energy potentially growing in a recent episode of Financial Issues. I'm wondering when more energy stocks might be coming back on the buy list. Sorry for so many questions, Dennis. No need to apologize for that. They're great questions. He says, also, I'm down in E26. Would now be a good time to dollar cost average that position up to 1%? Again, Dennis, 56, and we do appreciate his service to our country.
Well, what I would say is I thought we had a good amount on the buy list. I'm showing that we have 6 energy stocks on the buy list right now that you could choose from, and I think that they all represent good choices. As far as, I'm trying to check something real quick on that one that you asked about.
That's E26 there, Shana.
E26.
Wondering about that one there.
Yeah, if you have less than 1% in it, I would consider. Did he say averaging down or up?
He said it'd
up or down?
Be a good time. Oh, you know what? He said actually averaging up to 1%.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So he's actually up in the position. Yeah. Either way, I think it would be fine. I mean, anything less than a 1% exposure is not really significant. It's not going to contribute much to a gain in your portfolio. It's not going to contribute much to a loss either. So yeah, I would consider doing that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that, Shana. It's been nice to talk to Dennis on the air, too. We've had him on the show once before, so good friend. Thanks, brother.
Longtime partners.
Longtime partner, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, brother. Chris is up next, Shana, in the 45 to 55 model, rolling some of his expired CDs to preferreds, wondering, do I need to abide by the no less than 1% and no more than 3% rule when buying preferreds? He's wondering about FP83, has additional tax reporting. Does that apply with the Roth or traditional IRA funds? He's 54.
So yes, it does. On FP83, it does apply whether it's in a traditional Roth or taxable account. So you'll want to be aware of that. And then yes, it's kind of a rule of thumb or just kind of a guideline, that 1 to 3%. I would even go toward the 3%. You could maybe even do 4, but no more than 5. I think we've got enough preferreds on the list to get 3% in several different ones. And if you're in the older models, the growth in income, ignore this if you're young, but that is a sector that we will be increasing with the new models coming out. So I think you're good there. Well, I hear the music. That means that we've got to go for now. If you're listening to an outlet that only carries the short version of the show, for everyone else, we hope that you're going to stick around because we're going to be back with more financial issues. And make sure that you have our phone app so that you can get us whenever it's convenient for you. I'm your host, Shana Burt.
So I was just getting on my feet and I met someone and I got pregnant and I wasn't ready. How am I going to raise a baby? And I barely can take care of my daughter and myself right now. I Googled abortions and I scheduled an appointment thinking it was an abortion clinic. When I was at the clinic, after they told me how far along I was and that the baby had a heartbeat, I cried. And they gave me a minute by myself in the room. I broke down and I prayed to God. I asked the Lord to, when I walk out of those doors, to just give me the strength to be able to go through the pregnancy. I made my decision at that time. I'm super grateful that I'm able to go down this journey with my daughter. And I'm just super glad that I didn't have an abortion. I've learned how to trust God. It feels amazing.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, like, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That He will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on Him no matter what happens.
To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachourschools.com.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back, folks. Good to be here with you all this Thursday. I'll be taking you rest of the way here. Thank you all for joining us here on the live chat. So many of you on the chat. We've also got our live audience on Rumble and YouTube and Facebook. So I appreciate you all so much on those social media platforms. And please do consider liking and sharing and retweeting, reposting, whatever they call it these days. Whatever the Utes call it, Sam, right? Where you send it off, use your influence.
You know what we're talking about. Just do what you know we're talking about.
Do that. Yeah, do that. Absolutely. I was just on Rumble. Our numbers on Rumble seem to be growing, which is really cool. So Rumble, great free speech platform. Of course, the best place to get the show is always the watch live option on financialissues.org or the FISM app. So make sure that you get those. That way you can have full free access to our live show every day. So, boy, it's good to be with you all. Of course, our radio audience as well. Welcome to you. Thanks for joining us on the show today. I did want to give a quick reminder to you all. So we'll be starting a new series in Bible study tomorrow morning. I hope you'll join us for Bible study at 6:30. Of course, if you are a partner, you can access past Bible studies now by just going to the partner side of the website, the partner page, and go to Bible Study Archives. Just click on that. I think we've got probably 10 previous Bible studies going all the way back to the beginning of the fall. So those are up at your leisure if you want to take a listen to those. But we'll be starting Daniel tomorrow, and I'm really excited for that because, well, let me say this. I'm excited. I'm also a little nervous because, Daniel is one of those books that you just can't go into it lightly. I'm not saying you can go into any book of the Bible lightly, but let's face it, there's a bit of a difference between one of the New Testament epistles, for example, that just has a lot of good, solid, practical theology versus a book like Daniel or Revelation that speaks about the mysteries of God, the future mysteries, some of which we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. So I'm sure some of you, when you hear me talk about this stuff, it might just cause more questions in your mind than answers. But at any rate, I'm excited for this. And the reason I bring it up is I would hope that you all would consider joining for Bible study tomorrow and perhaps even invite someone as well. Always, at the opportunity of this time of the year that we have at Christmas is a great chance. But also when we start a new series, a good opportunity to invite someone new. So anyway, consider doing that tomorrow, 6:30 Eastern time. We'll be live for Bible study. We also do not have an ag report today, folks. However, we will have the ag report on the website later on today. So make sure that you check out the ag report if you're a farmer or rancher, or if you're just interested in learning more about agriculture. Craig gives a great job of that each day. We don't have it for the live show today, but we'll have it on the website and on the app later today as well. Okay, the markets, folks, let's take a look at what they're doing here. So yesterday, the markets closed at a fresh record high, thanks to, as what many investors are hoping, a continuation of this rally that we've been seeing in a small sense since November, but really in kind of a large sense since last spring, the spring of 2023. This tech rally, this AI rally has just been continuing to drive the markets higher and higher. So yesterday, the Dow Jones finished about 0.7% positive. The S&P 500 was about 2/3 positive, and the NASDAQ went way up over a full percentage point for some record closes there. The pre-markets were somewhat negative today, not really much change there. As they've just opened now, the markets are... Stand by for a moment for my internet. Pretty much unchanged as well. The Dow's slightly below the flat line. The S&P 500 is basically right at the flat line. The NASDAQ is slightly above the flat line also. We did see a record break yesterday. I believe it was yesterday for the first time. Bitcoin topped $100,000. So pretty interesting there to see from the crypto market, of course. U.S. 10-year Treasury sitting right now around 4.2%. Meanwhile, oil is hanging right around $68 a barrel. We've been getting news recently about the OPEC Plus delays, so we'll see if that has any kind of impact on oil prices. But that's what the markets are looking like here as we're continuing on in the final month of calendar year 2024. A couple quick hitters to get for you here. Job openings. We saw job openings rising 372,000 in October, totaling 7.74. The openings beat estimates by that of 7.5 million. Hiring slipped a bit, around 269,000 to 5.31 million. million, and layoffs fell 169,000 to 1.63 million. Meanwhile, private payrolls, so companies added 146,000 jobs in November, below the downwardly revised 184 number for October. The analysts had expected 163, so a little bit lower than that as well. Education, health services led job creation, adding about 50,000 positions there. So that's what jobs are looking like here, folks. I think we get a few more job numbers out today, possibly tomorrow as well. All right, Sam, we've got some headlines to get to, brother. It's always fun to have Sam join me on the program because not only is Sam well-spoken, but he's also more handsome than I am. So if we can have more Sam time on the screen, that's where, if you're the radio audience, you have the advantage there because you can just picture what we look like. But anyway, Sam, welcome back.
Yeah, right. You have the platonic ideal of men sitting behind the mic. I know.
Exactly.
Well, as I've said before, it's partially an illusion because you have better lighting than I, so I can hide behind this, and you have to fill in a little bit what I look like.
Well, the reason for that is because I need the better lighting. So that's what that's looking like. So Sam, we did hear yesterday Fed Chair Jerome Powell made some comments. What do you have for us there?
Oh yes, Seth. Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Yesterday he descended from the mighty mountaintop, speaking to the economic gods, and he came down and he bestowed his wisdom, and he kind of said a lot of nothing because he said that at the moment we can afford to be, quote, a little more cautious when it comes to rate cuts in the future. He said the economy is apparently doing better than it was doing in September when the Fed first started doing their rate cuts since COVID-19. Powell's remarks, by the way, they do come ahead of the very important Fed meeting that's going to start, I think, in a week or two. That's December 17th and 18th. Until now, investors, they had been anticipating that there might be a third rate cut on the way. That's also not just based on their own speculation about what's going to happen. That's also coming from some Fed governors themselves. I believe it was earlier this week on Monday, Fed Governor Christopher Waller, he said he was, quote, leaning towards yet another rate cut, though it should be noted that other Fed officials and governors have been pretty mum on the issue. They've not been willing to say one way or another what they're going to do, although it does look like at least Fed Chair Powell is leaning in a somewhat more conservative direction, though it's not clear if he's going to do another rate cut or not based on his comments alone.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's good. That's good stuff there, Sam. Thank you. Yeah, what I'm seeing pretty similarly, the markets seem to be cautiously expecting that the Fed might lower those rates again, so we might see one more rate cut here. But again, so much of this is just speculation, I feel like, Sam, especially now that we're kind of post the election, So I do think on Powell's mind probably is the thought of, am I going to have a job when Trump comes into office? Now, his term ends in 2026, so it only would last maybe a year and a half longer. But Sam, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's on Powell's mind at all here? Or do you think he's just kind of really trying to lay into the Fed is apolitical and I'm going to have a good platonic relationship with Donald Trump, just like I had with Joe Biden? What do you think?
Well, he did talk about that yesterday when he was asked, is there concern? Because as you know, Donald Trump has mentioned in the past that he would like at least the president maybe not to have any true authoritative statement over the Fed about what it's going to do, but that he'd at least like to have a say at the table. He's like, hey, I'm the elected representative of the people here. I should have a say over what this body does. You don't have to do what I say, but you should at least take into account what I have to say. Fed Chair Powell, he was kind of non-committal about that, other than saying that he has no concern that President Trump is going to directly interfere in what the Fed is going to do. So I don't know what he's thinking in his heart, but at least publicly he's saying that he thinks things are going to follow the status quo. Yeah, absolutely. So not a whole lot of clarity there, unfortunately. But coming to, if you've listened to the Fed, I almost said the Powell, the Fed. Well, in a way it works. It almost is the Powell, right? Like really we all lean on. I was making that joke at the beginning. He comes down and with bated breath, we're like, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? And everything he says can throw the markets which way in that. And it's a very strange situation and doesn't seem too tenable to me.
It is. And it's kind of one of those examples. You have your classic example of basically trying to word salad your way to a point where you can appease everybody on both sides. And you can see absolutely Powell's trying to do that. For sure.
I would not want his job.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. So it's interesting stuff there, folks. Absolutely. Our strategy, we really encourage you folks to not become so beholden to what the markets and the Fed are doing. At the same same time, we have to keep an eye on what they're doing because that has an impact on everything, So when Powell says something, the markets are going to react. Powell has a lot of power, a whole lot of power. And we could argue till we're blue in the face on the if that's really a good thing or not, that this one person, this mysterious, apparently non-governmental entity has all this power over our money and printing the money and the monetary supply and all those different things like that, tightening, easing, all that sort of stuff. I mean, they really do have a lot of power to basically ruin people's lives with some of this stuff. But it is all just very, very fascinating. But in terms of our strategy, folks, I would really, really encourage you to go check out Shana's commentary that she put up earlier this week. Really, really good stuff, and should be some encouragement for you as well. So earlier this year, we really told all of you kind of just, keep some of that powder dry, take more of a heavy cash position as we wait and see what's going to happen. Now, this was back in the summertime. We were waiting to see what would happen with the election and some other things like that. We saw Trump win the election, and there's excitement. And so we are able to, by God's grace, thankfully, see a lot more good opportunities for potential buys. So the buy list is growing. It's becoming more and more robust, and we're really excited for that. I say all that to you to say, please go check that out now, and please consider start to perhaps redeploy some of that powder that you've kept dry there. Hopefully that can be exciting for you. It's exciting for us for sure. We got more financial issues coming up. By the way, folks, forgot to mention the phone lines are open. So if you want to call in, 610-363-1110 is the number to call in if you want to join the conversation with me and Sam for the rest of this show today. We got more financial issues right after this.
Folks, I'm going to remind you about coming alongside us as soldiers with us in the battle that we are up against. And boy, we are up against a battle. Join so many others now that are giving $20. It has really helped us to keep our head above water.
For years, monthly donors have stood alongside us as we defund the darkness. Will you join us in the fight? Go to financialissues.org/donate.
Hi, this is Shana Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Pharrell came to Crossroads as a 4th grader. His name had been brought to my attention by the school principal. She was concerned about the direction he was heading.
I remember I wasn't the best kid. I got into trouble a lot.
He became a very active part of Crossroads Kids Club.
Mr. Engel, he was the leader that really impacted my life in so many ways. I honestly didn't want Crossroads to end.
We would invite all the students to come to our youth group here at Waterfront.
I felt God saying, come on, come to me. It felt like I was set free.
And I'll never forget the day when we had the privilege and the honor to baptize Pharrell.
I hugged Mr. Engel. I don't know if he understands. I'm truly, thankful to have him through the whole journey. If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now. I wouldn't be a follower of Christ.
Help reach more kids like Pharrell with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachourschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Yeah, it's really interesting, folks, talking about the Federal Reserve here. We were wondering, technically the Fed says, they answer to the American people, they answer to Congress, but who do they really answer to? Me and Sam were just talking at the break there about, the hypothetical question that was asked of Jerome Powell earlier this year, if the potential was that Donald Trump could fire him. And, Powell, I believe Sam said there's basically no way that could happen. Well, the question then becomes, who can? I mean, if the Fed's not doing their job, who's going to keep him accountable?
Yeah, I think he said if Trump asked him to step down, would he do it? He just said no.
Yeah, right. Which is essentially saying, if he fires me, I'm going to reject it. Like, how does that? I mean, if you work a job and you hold the power to be able to say, if your boss comes to you and says, "Hey, not doing a good job, you're out of here," and then you just say no, there's a problem there, right? So it's all really interesting, folks, to try to see this and try to make some sense of it here.
But Seth, as Dan used to say too, it's kind of a rock and a hard place here because we just live in a culture of financial irresponsibility, because he said, well, who else are you going to trust to handle this type of stuff? Because are you going to give it to Congress? We definitely don't want to give it to Congress based on what we've seen from them in the past. The Constitution does give them the power of the purse.
That's exactly right. I remember Dan talking about that. So you think the alternative could be even more problematic. So maybe it's the lesser of two evils, Sam. We can certainly hope and pray. As you pray for our elected officials, I think you can include the Federal Reserve in that as well. It'd be a good thing to pray for, the people who literally are in charge of our money. Pretty important, for sure. So, Sam, we got some other headlines to get to here, of course. Speaking of our elected officials who we need to pray for, whether we like them or not, good to keep them in prayer as well. What do we have coming out of the regulation record from President Biden?
Yeah, so this is quite the doozy, right? So a new report, I think I read this from the Washington Examiner, it looked at the Federal Register count that as of this week under President Biden has reached an all-time high for the year, hitting 96,088 pages for the year. That breaks President Obama's record in 2016, which was over 95,000. Now, what this is, the Federal Register, it publishes all the government regulations and administration proposals, though the page counts, they don't necessarily translate into actual regulations. Now, I say that to say that this is more of a rough measurement of how much regulation that a administration is putting in place, because that does not necessarily translate to final rules, but it does give you a rough idea of how much regulation an administration is pumping out. For example, President Biden's regulations have, as we've talked about on the show, they have cost the U.S. a stunning $1.8 trillion. That's according to the American Action Forum. So there is a correlation between the pages he's racking up and the amount of money it is costing the economy. Biden's regulations were 800 times more costly than Donald Trump's, which cost $1.2 billion. For more comparison here, Trump's first year in office ended with 61,000 pages in the Register. That's the lowest since Bill Clinton. Though, again, to talk about how this actually works, Trump did end up in the top 5 in 2020 with over 86,000, and that was in large part due to COVID-19, which did involve a lot of federal regulation and federal proclamations as well.
Yeah. So, Sam, just for us to understand this, federal regulation, this is essentially, basically, is this more than just Biden says, Biden signs an executive order or something like that? This is like an official, hey, this is what's happening. We're going to put tax dollars to this. We're going to sign it into law. How does that work?
So it's all of those things, right? It's proclamations. So everything that President Biden signs or does or orders, that's in there. It also includes proposals. So not everything that President Biden wants to get done is going to actually happen.
Right.
However, is going to end up in those pages. So you still get a rough feeling of how much power the administration is trying to wield in the regulatory agencies.
Yeah, absolutely.
The question is, does that actually come to fruition?
Right. Yeah, for sure. Boy, it's kind of a picture, I think, of not just the Biden administration, but I do think to some degree, I think it's a picture of that political camp in itself. I mean, the left has kind of sort of marketed itself, whether inadvertently or not, marketed itself as the party of big government. Mm-hmm. And we here at the ministry, of course, Sam, I know you agree with this as well. We're very cautious of big government. One of our favorite quotes here is Ronald Reagan saying the most dangerous words you can hear are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." If the government gets involved in something that it should not, it almost always never works. Almost always makes it worse. There is a role for government, folks. We talked about this, I think, on Tuesday's show, how the government is meant to provide military defense, infrastructure. It's meant to provide civil leadership. It's meant to uphold the law, make good laws. I believe the best case are laws that are based upon the true and clear teaching of Scripture. That's when government's at its best. But that's really kind of what the government's for. The government is not to involve itself in the private lives of American citizens. It's not to become a charity organization that just hands out free stuff to people. And so I think what we really can see here, Sam, is there's a serious danger in big government and government overreach. I mean, big time danger.
Well, and you got to remember, these aren't even laws per se. These are just regulations. So it's not exactly accountable to the people in the same sense, because then it gets shifted off the authority from Congress into some random executive agency. And we've seen under Donald Trump how difficult it is to change what's happening in those agencies, because they're not even entirely accountable to the president, who theoretically is the one that's vesting them with that authority.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's absolutely right. I've heard it said very wisely before that the government is very much like a monster that takes power and doesn't give it back. Yes. So if you have a crisis, you call upon the government to help you, and the government maybe swoops in and helps, like, for example, instituting lockdowns during a pandemic. Exactly. It's very hard to give that power back, man. And it's very hard to give that money back as well. I think that's related to why we see the rising of taxes consistently, because people are willing to forfeit their rights to find the protection that they think they can find in the almighty government, when really, oftentimes, and this is not a call for anarchy, by the way, this is simply a call for us to remember that the government is flawed and it's not God. Boy, it's not God. If you put your hope in your government, you are going to be mistaken, and you're going to be disappointed every time, I think. So my hope is that in this new administration, Sam, as I've been seeing, at least the kind of hopefully the foreshadowings of that with Trump's cabinet picks and different things like that. I'll be watching with bated breath to see how this actually plays out once January of 2025 comes around. Sam, speaking of that, as we're talking about government slashing, one of our favorite topics we've returned to on this show is the DOGE government, the meme coin, the Department of Government Efficiency on illegal immigration costs. Give us some of these numbers here, Sam. What's been going on?
Yeah, so I've mentioned this before. If you're on Twitter and you're not following the DOGE page, I highly encourage you to do so, because they do break down these numbers very well. They actually recently shared a number that we had covered on the show, but they gave a little bit more detail that I hadn't originally seen. So they referenced this study that was done earlier this year by the Federation for American Immigration Reform. And what it found was that in 2023 alone, illegal immigration costs U.S. taxpayers $150.7 billion. Just keep in mind, that's just for 1 year alone. Now, as I said, we had covered that on the show, but they give some really good comparisons here just to put that number into perspective. I had said in the past to you, Seth, that once you cross a certain monetary threshold, it begins to lose all meaning, because, we as average citizens just aren't dealing with that kind of money in our day-to-day lives, so it doesn't really mean anything anymore. But by way of comparison, what is $150 billion? Well, according to DOGE, when you factor in inflation, that is about half of all the United States has spent in World War I. We spent $334 billion in World War I. The difference is you can debate whether or not World War I was a good idea for us to get involved in. There's really no debate on whether or not allowing mass illegal immigration into the country is a good idea. We're not even getting anything out of it. We're just facilitating it. We're not even trying to solve the problem. This is just all coping with the problem, is $150 billion. More comparison here, the Apollo space program, that cost us $257 billion. The Manhattan Project, $30 billion. The Panama Canal, $15.2 billion. The Hoover Dam, $1 billion.
So the hope with all those things, and Sam, you're exactly right. You mentioned, each of those things we could get into a debate about, how good some of them were and some of the ramifications of that as well. You could talk about the Manhattan Project with that also. But yeah, there's no question. Like you said, this is not to reform the immigration system as much as it is just to manage the immigration system, to manage the broken immigration system.
And in a way, almost just facilitate
just
allowing it to continue to be a problem.
Yeah.
All of these other things, like I said, you can debate whether or not it was a good idea. At least there was a clear problem, and then here's a solution to try to fix it. This isn't even fixing the problem. This is just keeping it going, keeping the status quo going, meaning that you're going to spend $170 billion again in 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Sam, I think the lesson for us with this, and this is good for us to remember here, is that as excited as we are, and we should be very excited for the bullet that we dodged, to use a pun that has become part of the conservative lexicon since July 13th. We did dodge a bullet on November 5th. Absolutely. At the same time, I think it's good for us to just tamper our expectations to think that come January 20th or whatever the day is that Trump is going to come into office, that things are just going to be fixed like that. It's going to take time to clean this up. And you know, it's going to take money, tax dollars to clean this up too. Now, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with our tax dollars being spent to clean up messes. I'm a little bummed that our tax dollars were part of what created these messes in the first place. But the fact that we need to clean up these messes, I'm a little more encouraged to say, okay, at least my taxes are going towards something good and positive. And hopefully we can see that here, folks, for sure. Hey, I do hope, folks, you'll check out Preborn. I meant to mention Preborn. They've saved over 300,000 babies from abortion in the last 18 years. Just doing some great work, helping to save babies. One of our dear friends here at the ministry. We got to run, folks. It's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money God has given to us. God bless you all, and we'll see you tomorrow.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.